The storm had rolled in quick that night, dark clouds swallowing the stars and the moon until the prairie seemed to disappear into endless black. Rain lashed against the ranch house windows, and thunder cracked over the hills. John McAllister, the rancher, had just finished securing the barn doors when he heard something faint beneath the storm, like a cry, thin and broken, carried on the wind. At first, he thought it was the wind itself, whistling through the pines. But then came another sound, a woman's voice, soft, trembling. He grabbed his lantern, heart hammering, and moved toward the edge of the ranch yard. There, by the old fence line, he saw her. A woman. She was barefoot, mud streaking her pale ankles, her dress torn and clinging to her thin frame. Her hair, once golden, was matted with rain, and her lips trembled as she whispered, "Don't look at me." John froze, not because of fear, but because of the raw pain in her voice. Her face was half hidden in shadow, but he caught sight of bruises along her cheek, her jaw. A shiver rippled through him, not from the cold, but from rage at whoever had hurt her. Still, he didn't move closer right away. He set the lantern low, so the light wouldn't blind her. "Miss," he said gently, "you're safe here. I ain't gonna hurt you." She shook her head violently, hugging herself, stepping back as if even his kindness was a threat. "Please, don't look at me," she whispered again, and the words broke something inside him. John took a slow breath. Then, without thinking of pride, without caring about mud soaking into his jeans, he fell to one knee before her, the lantern glowing soft between them. He lowered his head, not forcing her to meet his eyes. "You don't have to hide," he said softly. "Not from me. Whoever did this to you, they'll never touch you again. I swear it." The woman's breath hitched. She stared at him, this tall, broad-shouldered rancher kneeling like she was royalty, when she felt nothing but broken. Her legs gave out beneath her, and she crumpled into the mud. He caught her before she hit the ground, his arms strong but careful, as if she might shatter if he held too tight. She flinched at first, then went limp, sobbing quietly into his chest. Her name was Clara. It took days before she told him, and even then, it was no more than a whisper over a cup of warm broth he'd coaxed her into drinking. For the first 2 nights, she barely spoke at all, except to plead that he not look at her face. She kept her head turned away, hiding beneath her tangled hair. John respected her silence. He cooked for her, left food by the bedside, and tended to his chores with the steady patience only a rancher knows. He didn't press her with questions. He only said, "Take your time. You ain't got to talk till you're ready." Clara watched him sometimes when he wasn't looking, how he cared for his horses with gentleness, how he moved about the kitchen with quiet confidence. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice carried a warmth that made her chest ache. On the 3rd morning, she finally asked, "Why did you help me?" John looked up from mending a saddle. "Because you needed it. No one else would have." He set the leather aside and met her eyes, though she quickly turned her face away. "Then they ain't the kind of people worth remembering." Something in his tone made her throat tighten. As weeks passed, Clara grew stronger. The bruises on her body faded, though the ones inside lingered longer. She began helping around the ranch in small ways, folding laundry, feeding chickens, sweeping the porch. Each time John tried to thank her, she shook her head, insisting, "I owe you everything." But John always answered the same, "You don't owe me a thing." One afternoon, while she was hanging sheets to dry in the sun, a gust of wind pulled one loose, and she laughed, the first laugh he'd ever heard from her. It was soft, almost startled, like she'd forgotten what laughter felt like. John, watching from across the yard, felt something stir in his chest he hadn't known was missing. Later that night, when thunder rolled again across the prairie, Clara startled in her sleep, crying out. John rushed to her room, lantern in hand. She sat upright, trembling, her face pale with terror. "They're coming back," she whispered, clutching the blanket. "They'll find me." John knelt beside her bed, just as he had that first night, lowering his head to show he wasn't a threat. "No one's coming for you, Clara. Not while I'm here. I'd put my life on it." Her hand, cold and shaking, reached out before she realized what she was doing. Her fingers brushed his, and in that small touch, she felt, for the first time in years, safe. Clara's past was a dark one. She had been forced into marriage with a cruel man in town, a man who treated her not as a wife but as property. When she had tried to flee once before, he'd found her and beaten her near to death. This time, when she escaped barefoot into the night, she hadn't expected to live. She thought the storm would take her, or the wilderness would. Instead, she found John. Or maybe, she thought sometimes, John found her. The seasons turned. Clara's steps grew lighter, her laughter less rare. She found herself humming while baking bread, smiling at the foals in the pasture. John, for all his strength, was a quiet man, but Clara saw the way he softened around her, the way he paused to listen when she spoke, the way his eyes lingered on her like she was the sunrise itself. And yet, one thing still haunted her. She still whispered, some nights when she thought he couldn't hear, "Don't look at me." But John did look at her. Not at the bruises that had healed, not at the scars that remained, but at her, Clara, the woman who had survived storms and cruelty and still had a laugh like sunlight breaking clouds. One evening, as the sun dipped gold over the hills, Clara stood by the fence, gazing out at the horizon. John came to stand beside her, his hat in hand. For a long moment, they were quiet. Then, in a voice low and steady, he said, "Clara, the first night I saw you, you told me not to look at you. But I need you to know, I've never stopped looking. Not at the bruises, not at the hurt. At you, just you." Her breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of fear anymore. He dropped to one knee, just as he had that first night, the prairie wind tugging at his shirt. His voice broke as he whispered, "I don't want to just protect you anymore. I want to give you a home. A family. My name. If you'll have it. Clara, will you be my wife?" For the first time in years, Clara didn't whisper, "Don't look at me." Instead, she lifted his chin so their eyes met fully in the fading light. And through her tears, she smiled. "Yes."